There you go.
Great, thanks, Ruth. Hi to everyone, and we're very excited to be here with you again to host these free lifestyle medicine webinars. They're designed to support you on your weight loss journeys and to help you achieve that long-term weight loss success that we're all striving for. So each webinar that we do covers an important but often overlooked aspect that's really essential to work on for your long-term weight loss. So if you have been here before, then we welcome you back. And if you haven't been before, then I really hope you find this information really, really useful. And just to do a few introductions, my name is Dr. Sarah Baker. I'm a GP for Boots Online Doctor. I've got a background in physiotherapy and a specialist interest in lifestyle medicine. So it's a real pleasure to be able to join you today. And I'm here with my colleague Ruth. Oh, Ruth, you're on mute.
It's good not to be on mute, isn't it? Hi, and a very warm welcome. I'm Ruth Taylor. I'm a nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor and also a registered nurse. And yeah, absolutely a total specialisation in lifestyle medicine. We know that this is such an important element of any weight loss journey. And actually, it is the one aspect that will stand you, whatever you do. If you change aspects of your diet or lifestyle alongside any aspect of weight loss, this is the thing that's going to keep you where you want to be in the long term. So it's such an important aspect and often very overlooked. So we're thrilled to have the opportunity of seeing you every week. Also, just to let you know, if you've brought any questions along already, please do pop them into the Q&A box if you can find that. If you can't find that for any reason, please pop them into the chat box. As this is a webinar, we really don't take personal nitty-gritty medical questions. We'll direct you back to your medical provider. By all means, ask if you think it's appropriate for a webinar. And if for any reason we think we are outside of the remit of safe practice, we'll just redirect you with that information. So please don't worry. And really, we want this to be all about you. We want to know how you're doing. We're going to be bringing in a little bit of accountability. We've decided to the webinars, so watch this space. We'll be checking in on you at the following webinars just to see how things have been in terms of, so next week we're going to be asking you all about whether you've done anything to improve your sleep, if sleep was a problem for you, and we're really interested to hear back from you as to whether you're making any changes. So we're just going to be bringing in a little bit of a loop so we can monitor if it's making any difference for you and whether it's giving you the help that you need. We are joined today in the background by our very supportive colleagues, Raman and Julia. Thank you so much as well for being here. And they will be sharing any links that we ask them to share and opening the poll. And that's very timely. We have our first poll coming up now. And just to let you know, this is completely anonymous. We don't know who's answering what, and we just know that you've answered. And we're interested to know all about what's going on for you and sleep, which is, we thought, a good time to start would be right now. Sarah, let's have a look at the poll, and then let's take it from there. So you should be able to see the poll now, everyone. Do take a look if you can see it, hopefully. Yes, great, got some answers coming in. Great.
So we'll just give you a few minutes to have a little look at that. I can see the numbers of people answering are going up.
Yeah. Lots of people waking up in the night and lots of people who are waking up more than once, quite a few times by the looks of it. I'd be really interested to know if you are waking up during the night, during your sleep, whether you're managing to get back to sleep again. That's quite an important question that for some reason we haven't popped on the poll, so I'll make sure we amend that for next time. But do tell us in the chat box, if you're waking up, are you getting back to sleep or are you lying there awake? Because that's the worst,
Good
isn't it?
to know as well that lots of people are aware that sleep quality and length does affect their weight loss. So that's really good to see.
Yeah. But actually, isn't it interesting? 60% of you are not happy with your sleep quality or length. So hopefully from today's webinar, you'll be able to take away some ideas of what to do to improve things for yourselves. And
Really,
actually,
really with how much sleep people are getting, anywhere from 7 to 9 hours to less than 4 hours. So hopefully for those people that are getting less than 7 hours, we've got some really good tips for you today.
Yeah, definitely. Great. That's really interesting. So 93% of the people who've answered the poll are waking in the night. Gosh, yeah, it's tough and it's real, isn't it? So Sarah, let's get going.
Yeah, lovely. Right, so lots of you seem to be aware, which is great, that sleep does affect your weight. And I'm just going to go into that in a little bit more detail now. So, our appetite is predominantly affected by two hormones. These are called ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin is our hunger promoting hormone, and leptin is the one that tells us when we're full. And these hormones are directly affected by how much sleep we're getting. So the research has looked at this and it's found that if we don't get enough sleep, um, then the amount of ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, increases and our leptin levels decrease. So too little sleep regularly is thought to be linked to leptin resistance. So, what that means is if we sleep badly or we don't get enough sleep, we tend to be less satisfied with how much we've eaten and what we've eaten and tend to want to eat more. So, that's really, really powerful. We also know that not getting enough sleep affects our food choices. So, if we think about that, lots of you can probably relate to those feelings of being really, really tired, very sleep deprived, and just craving those foods that are really high in calories, really high in carbohydrates. And that's to try and boost those energy levels that are suffering.
Mm.
And at these times, that's the times that we tend to seek those unhealthy foods, the ones that promote weight gain, the foods like chocolate sweets, the carbohydrate-rich foods like white bread, pasta, all of those sort of less healthful foods. Although sometimes these foods can actually make us feel good because they give us a bit of a sugar high or an energy fix, it's really not a sustained feeling. And for those of you that joined us last week, we talked about cravings, and that webinar talked through those foods that tend to negatively affect our blood sugar balance as well as our energy levels. Because when we eat these foods, we get sugar highs, and that's followed by a sugar dip or a bit of a crash. And ultimately, that's going to leave us feeling more tired and more hungry. So we end up in that dangerous cycle where we're chasing our tails, trying to boost our energy levels, looking for that good energy balance. And we do it with all the wrong foods. But importantly, those sort of very energy dense foods are the ones that also make it much harder for us to lose weight. And they also contribute to us putting on weight. So we really need to make sure that we're prioritizing our sleep so that we don't get into this cycle where we're craving those foods.
Such an important aspect, isn't it? So we thought we'd talk a little bit more about cortisol. We talked about this in the stress webinar. Um, and what we know is that when we're under a lot of stress or when we have sort of interruption to our normal sleep cycle, we can have problems with cortisol levels. So cortisol is one of our stress hormones. And if we have too much cortisol, it can impact our production of melatonin. And melatonin is a hormone that helps us to regulate our sleep cycle. So what we also know from the research around cortisol is that we should have a peak in our cortisol first thing in the morning, which should help us to wake up. But if our cortisol levels become dysregulated, we can find that we're waking up at unusual times of the day and night. And that can also affect our production of melatonin. And so we may find it difficult to get to sleep. Um, Also, the reverse of this cycle is true. So it's almost like a vicious circle or a sort of like a bidirectional relationship. So if we have poor sleep or sleep deprivation or poor quality sleep, which I would say the people who've answered that they're like 93% of you are saying you're waking up more than, during the night and having difficulty potentially getting back to sleep, then you are somebody that we would think has got a little bit of poor sleep quality going on. And we know that that poor sleep quality and sleep deprivation can really disrupt our normal cortisol rhythm. So this is really interesting. So it sort of becomes this vicious cycle. A lack of sleep can lead to higher levels of cortisol at night, which can really affect your ability to fall asleep and to stay asleep. So like I say, it just creates this continuous vicious cycle. We also know, we've talked about cortisol in a couple of the other webinars, but cortisol in itself, not only does it disrupt our sleep, but it can also all by itself lead to weight gain. And that can be because of all of the stress mechanisms that we have, but also when we have too much cortisol in our system, we're likely to have high levels of insulin. And we know from all of the webinars, hopefully if you've been following the webinars and the information from our lifestyle medicine team, that actually we want our production of insulin to be reduced as much as possible. So many other factors can affect how much cortisol we're producing apart from sleep. So caffeine, if we have too much caffeine, for some of us, we have high sensitivity to caffeine that can disrupt cortisol levels. Our blood sugar, as Sarah was saying, is a really important element of trying to balance that cortisol. So looking at the information on the how to eat and the what to eat webinars would be really helpful. And you could look at the retakes if you've not tuned into those before. And then just thinking about long-term stress. Many of us are under lots of long-term stress, but it's how, okay, we can't always get rid of that stress, can we, Sarah? But we can mitigate how we deal with that stress, or we can put things into our lives that actually help to calm us down. So we're going to talk about some strategies to help in terms of all of these things and sleep in particular. Just finally, if you're somebody, and we know we often have people who come along to the webinars who've got other underlying health conditions, so they may have long-term pain or inflammation going on in the body, and shift workers, then all of those situations can also disrupt regularly that whole cortisol cycle and can really sort of add to the sort of vicious cycle that you might be experiencing. So I think it's really important for us to be thinking about it. And sometimes just acknowledging that that's the cycle you're in can be really helpful. And then just thinking about little things you can do. I think if you're feeling overwhelmed and you've got a lot going on, it's important not to overwhelm yourselves with doing too much all in one go. So, as Sarah was saying, sleep can really affect our appetite, but it also, as well as impacting our production of leptin and giving us an element of leptin resistance, it can also increase our hunger hormone ghrelin, which can lead us to snack. And also, interestingly, we won't feel as full. So it can be really hard to tune into our appetite and trust our appetite because our appetite is going to become a little bit dysregulated. So research has shown us, the research that we found and that we've looked at shows us that people who are sleep deprived regularly, so 1 or 2 nights occasionally, is not what we call a true sleep deprivation pattern. But those who are regularly sleep deprived, maybe having less than 5 hours sleep, the research tells us that you will automatically, what they have found from looking at people and their patterns of behavior, is that generally in that situation, people are eating around 300 calories extra a day. And those calories are often from saturated fats or high sugar, high processed type foods to give yourself that energy boost. And also, interestingly, the research has found that we're much more likely in that situation to eat later in the day. And this will sort of just carry on this whole vicious cycle. So we're going to really find it difficult in that situation to lose weight. We're going to find it really difficult in that situation to use the energy that we've eaten. So what we're going to do is we're going to store it. It makes sense, doesn't it? It makes perfect sense to me. So a study looking at people who were really healthy, who had no health issues at all, and whose blood glucose were in really healthy ranges, found that if they had 4 hours of sleep for sort of 4 hours or less of sleep for 6 nights, they put them in a trial setting, that was enough to make those people have parameters of pre-diabetes or sort of heading in the road of type 2 diabetes. And also what the research tells us is if we're getting less than 5 hours sleep a night every night consistently or several nights a week, we're a 40% higher risk of being obese. So it's a really, really important element that we have to talk about. This is one of our least popular webinars, which we find quite surprising, but I think it's because there's no real awareness for all of us that this is so important. So if any of your friends who are suffering and who are really finding it difficult to lose weight, do direct them to some support in terms of their sleep because it's such an important point. The final thing I want to say, and it's not really great news, but it's really important for us to understand, is if we are suffering with loss of sleep regularly and we're trying to lose weight, we are much more likely to lose muscle mass than fat mass. And that's really important in terms of our long-term progression of healthy weight and also our weight loss maintenance, because if we lose muscle rather than fat, then we're going to find it much more challenging to keep the weight off. So really interesting, really hard hitting information, very research orientated. Sarah, we both find this staggering, don't we?
We do. And, if we can just get the sleep right, you said 300 extra calories if we're getting less than 5 hours. So if we can really prioritize sleep, really think about how we can optimize it, and hopefully we can make some really positive headway into that weight loss.
And please don't feel overwhelmed. This is why we're talking about it. It's really important, isn't it, for us to raise all of our awareness and then find some strategies. And that's what we're going to be thinking about
And
shortly.
as Ruth said, it's finding those small things and having that accountability. So, we'll challenge you at the end of the webinar to make one change and then let us know how it's gone by next week.
Brilliant.
I also wanted to touch on caffeine and sleep, because lots of us are massive fans of caffeine, whether that's coffee, teas, hot chocolate, green teas, matcha, Coke, in any of its forms, most of us will consume caffeine. But it's really, really important to think about how much caffeine we're having in the day, particularly in the context of our sleep. So, research has shown that 400 milligrams is generally considered to be the upper limit of caffeine that we should be consuming in a day to avoid those negative effects of caffeine, the effects like problems with sleep, anxiety, jitters, just to mention a few. So if you are within this 400 milligrams and you're still struggling to sleep, then I'd suggest reducing it further and also thinking about the time of day that you're having caffeine, and probably try and not have any caffeine after midday and switch to decaffeinated drinks after lunchtime. People process caffeine at different rates, but generally speaking, it takes about an hour for caffeine to reach its peak level in our body after we've consumed it, and it can stay at that level for some time. By about 5 to 6 hours, the body's generally processed half of that caffeine, but it takes that time again to process it again by half. So caffeine really does linger in the body, and it can have very detrimental effects on sleep if we're having it too late in the day. I think it's also important to mention that if you have too much in the way of sugar or refined foods and alcohol, these also have been found to have a negative effect on your sleep quality and quantity as well. So yeah, that's probably all I'm going to say at the moment on caffeine, unless anyone wants any more specific information about it. So I want to move on to talk about how much sleep do we need to support weight loss. I'm not sure if any of you have got an idea about this, but lots of people probably have got sort of a vague ballpark in their mind. And I think it's important to say that everybody is a little bit different. But average, what the research tells us is that getting between about 7 to 9 hours sleep a night is really important for our general health as well as our weight. So that's about an average of 7.5 hours or 7.5 hours of sleep a night. And I know looking at that poll, lots and lots of people are struggling to achieve that. There's a lot of people that were under that 6 hours. So higher rates of obesity have been found in people who are regularly getting less than that 7 hours of sleep a night. There's also lots of other health consequences of consistently getting poor sleep. It also affects your metabolic health, your cardiovascular health, affects sort of the way that we're thinking, lots and lots of negative effects. So this is really worth thinking about and prioritizing. So what I'd like to say initially is make sure you're giving yourself enough of a sleep opportunity. So that's giving yourself the time to drift off to sleep, then to allow yourself to have that 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And for lots of you, thinking about getting 9 hours of sleep seems so far off. So just think about where you are now and how you're gradually going to be able to increase that amount of sleep. I think the research tells us that actually the best way to improve the quality and quantity of your sleep is not necessarily to have a regular bedtime, but to have a regular wake time. So be that 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever that is for you in the morning, just keep that consistent time. Because although initially you might find yourself getting quite tired trying to wake up at that time every day, your body will naturally fall into a better sleep rhythm and you'll find yourself sort of going to bed naturally earlier if you're waking up at that consistent and regular time. But it's also important to know that your sleep quality is a lot better if you get to bed before midnight. So when you're thinking about that 7 to 9 hours, make sure you're thinking about getting to bed at sort of 10, 11 o'clock if you can, just so you're before midnight. And this is all to do with how our bodies respond to the changes in light patterns in the evening and the production of melatonin. So really important to think about. Okay. And like I said, if you're not getting anywhere near that 7 to 9 hours, just think about how you could do that gradually and slowly to gently increase. It might only be by 15, 20 minutes, sort of over the course of a couple of nights.
Yeah, and I think we have to be really realistic here. Like if we're somebody who's only getting 4 or 5 hours, you're not going to suddenly get, well, you may
No.
be lucky and it may be because of choice that you're not getting that sleep. If it's not choice and you are trying and you're lying there awake, which I know some people have said they are, then it's about just changing that pattern very slowly and just consistently putting in those steps. So what are we going to do about it? I think this is really important, and we're obviously all very motivated, hopefully, to try and make some changes. So, we would recommend following either the core eating plan or the Mediterranean style of eating, depending on who you are, what your weight loss goals are, and what's going on for you in terms of your physical health. So if you can share those links, that would be great, please, to the core and the Mediterranean style of eating. And please take a look at those if you've not looked at those dietary approaches before. They're just really about balancing your hormones, balancing your blood sugar. And when we're doing that, as we were saying earlier, it will help to balance our cortisol production. Then what we can additionally do are all of these things. It's not huge amounts, but actually most of these, one of these will be manageable by each of you, I'm sure, hopefully. So interestingly enough, kiwis have been found to really help with that sleep cycle. And the research suggests that eating kiwis at night can help to improve your sleep cycle because it boosts your production of one of our neurotransmitters, serotonin. And the research suggests it helps people to get sleep faster and sleep longer. And in fact, one of my friends has just told me that her daughter is now eating kiwis at night, and lo and behold, she actually is sleeping. So that is really quite good because she is somebody who is suffering with all sorts of insomnia problems for all sorts of stress reasons. So that's great. Great to hear that it's helped someone. Almonds are a source of melatonin and magnesium, and both of those aspects are really helpful for promoting restful sleep. So a small handful of nuts, maybe in a slightly larger snack, may help. So I would personally chop up some almonds and put them with a little bit of natural yogurt. But we're all different and we all like different things. But that can be something to consider. Protein has yet again reared its head as a champion for sleep this time. So, a little bit of protein before bed can also help to promote better sleep because some of the protein amino acids called tryptophan again can help to promote restful sleep. So, we want to be thinking about a small amount of protein, which is why I would team it up with some natural yogurt. But we're all different, we all like different foods. It's about finding something healthy that you like. Eggs and avocado could be an option for you. A little bit of healthy fat again may help in terms of calming down inflammation, supporting all of that anti-inflammatory approach. And then, interestingly, casein, which is one of the sort of proteins that we find in dairy products, has been found to help with muscle mass. So, again, just thinking about that whole loop and what's going on when we're not sleeping well and our reduction in muscle mass, it's really important to be thinking, okay, gosh, some foods are so helpful that they hit several different aspects of what we're trying to achieve. So maybe some milk or some dairy products, if you're happy to have those, would be really worth considering. And there are all sorts of other things. I think we've got some drinks that we're going to share as well. So let's have a look at the drinks. This is really interesting. Sarah, you've already talked about caffeine. So some of us metabolize caffeine much quicker than others of us. And if you're somebody who can deal with caffeine, then you're lucky and it may not have such a huge impact on your sleep. But generally speaking, we would say if you don't know which camp your body is working in, we'd say cut that caffeine out after lunch. And some people even bringing it earlier in the day and just having a sort of really decent cup of coffee, if that's something you enjoy first in the morning, would work maybe for you. But caffeine's got quite a long half-life, hasn't it, Sarah? So it sort of like sits in your body for much longer than the sort of caffeine. It takes much longer to process. So a personal favourite is this tart cherry juice. It's from the Montmorency cherry, very specific type of cherry. And it's been found that a little bit of this cherry juice, which you can dilute with water, can promote your production of, it's got some melatonin in it, so it can really help in terms of promoting sleepiness. And we would say get some of that tart cherry juice and dilute it. Personally, I love a little bit of it drizzled onto that natural yogurt, so it's just delicious. It's quite tart, but it's really, really nice. And the research suggests this can help with longer and better quality of sleep. So really interesting. Small study. Obviously, not many people pay for these studies to be done. Unfortunately, it's not like big drug trials. So when we're looking at food trials, they tend to be a lot smaller. Passion flower is a lovely tea that we can drink, and it can help to produce our calming neurotransmitters. So that is something really worth thinking about. And switching over to passion flower tea from sort of like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or chamomile, and also there's valerian tea. All of those teas can really help in terms of calming you down. Chamomile has really been found to help induce better quality sleep, and also to help reduce insomnia. So really worth trying. I know we've heard about these teas, but I just wonder how many of us have really tried them. And it's worth going for a really good quality tea, and just really making that something that's part of your self-care routine. And it's also just about reducing all of those stimulants that can be really stimulating your cortisol. So that can really help in terms of that whole cycle, can't it, Sarah?
Can indeed, yes. Thanks, Ruth. That's really, really helpful, and definitely a few things in there that I might try. Right, we just also wanted to give you just a few top tips to get that body clock reset. I think if you can get that circadian rhythm back into its natural balance, back where it should be, you're going to feel so much more alert. You're going to have better strength, better stamina, and really importantly, more control over your food choices. So I just want to give you a few top tips that you can work on. So the very best way to reset your body clock is to get outside as quickly as possible after you've woken up in the morning. That only needs to be for 5 minutes, but if it can be for longer, then that's so much the better. That's the best way to regulate that really important sleep hormone that Ruth talked about earlier, melatonin. It's a hormone that's released from the body and builds up throughout the day, all the way through into the evening. And when we've got a critical amount of it, that's when we start to feel sleepy and ready for bed. So the best way to trigger that, to get that going, is to get out first thing in the morning in that early morning sunlight. But that being said, I would say as much light as you can get in the day is going to be hugely impactful and beneficial for you. So if you're working during the day and you've got the ability to be by a window, then I would really encourage you to sit by that window and get as much natural light as you possibly can. I think, lots of us are office workers, especially sort of businesses are now encouraging people to be back in the office, and it's quite difficult to get that natural light. We're all under artificial lights now, so try and take breaks, even if they're just 5 minutes breaks, to get outside and to get some of that natural daylight. Another thing I would suggest, again, is a lot of us are on screens for most of the day, and screens, whether it be phones, laptops, TVs, whatever, they emit blue light, and that negatively impacts, or that suppresses the production of that really important hormone melatonin. So trying to reduce the amount of screen time that we have in the afternoon and evenings, particularly if we can. And if we can't, then there's options for reducing that blue light. So you can get blue light blocking glasses, you can get blue light blocking protective screens for laptops and phones. So I'd really encourage you to have a look into that. And another thing that we can do is when we're thinking about sort of getting towards the evening, is thinking about how we wind down. That's really, really important for your body to get a great night's sleep. So we've got a sleep savasana for you to try, and that was made by one of our lifestyle medicine doctors, Dr. Wellapelli. I don't know if we can release the link for that into the chat box, but this is really designed to try and help you get a great night's sleep and to switch off, to calm down in the evening, to reduce those cortisol levels. So I'd really encourage you to have a look at that. So I'm just going to go through a few tips to help you think about what to do winding down in the evening to get your body into that really relaxed, that best state for sleeping. So first of all, I'd suggest trying to create a dark environment, and that would be for about an hour before you go to bed. And that's again to try and get the production of melatonin up, so that body sleep hormone needs to sort of increase as much as possible before we can get off to sleep. So ways you could do that is maybe either dimming lights, switching off lights. If you have candles, maybe have some nice candlelight. Any of those things are going to be really good at reducing the glare of light and allowing your body to produce melatonin. Keeping your bedroom cool and clean. So having radiators off, having windows open. This is going to help your body drop its core temperature, and we need that drop in core temperature to enable us to get off to sleep. So yeah, opening windows, getting lots of fresh air into your room is a really great way of doing it. Another option would be to have a warm bath or a warm shower. That encourages heat to be released from the surface of the body, which causes a drop in your core body temperature. So two really good tips for trying to reduce your body temperature. I think the other thing I'd say is if any of you have got children or little ones, we're really good at helping them establish good nighttime routines to get them into really good patterns for sleep. They're so beneficial for sending the right signals to your body to let your body know it's time to switch off and it's time to drift off. So think about what you can do to help yourself to wind down, to switch off before bed. A few ideas might be thinking about doing some stretching before you go to bed. And if that's not for you, maybe thinking about doing some breathing techniques or some meditation. Other people might find journaling is really helpful. It helps get all of those busy daytime thoughts out of your mind and just get them down on paper. That could be a really powerful technique for you. And I guess another thing that I would suggest is maybe using, if you are really struggling with sleep, some of the apps can be quite good for helping you drift off. So apps like Headspace or Calm, they can be really, really useful. But this is something to really kind of take the time to focus on, because the impact of sleep on our weight is absolutely huge. We really need to get that body into a nice, relaxed, sleepy state so that we can release those full hormones, that leptin, so that we've got great control of our appetite. Sleep has also got so many other benefits aside from the benefits of weight. So we think about that as well. Think about the fact that it helps to reinforce memories that we've sort of made in the day. It helps us with our immune system. It helps so many body functions. So it's a really, really important thing to prioritize. Don't know if you've got any other top tips, Ruth, that you might want to add in.
Okay, sorry. I was just going to say, yes, I think really we were just going to suggest what you did over the next few days. I think you've covered most of the tips. I can see we've got a few questions which we'll move over to, and we've got a final poll. I think we're going to ask you what you might do differently as a result of coming to the webinar. So let's have a look and see if we can find that. And great, there we go. Here we go. So just take a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes to have a look at our sleep end webinar poll, and we'd love to know what you might do differently. And while you're thinking about that, we just thought we'd put together a little list of what you might want to try. So maybe start thinking about where you are now, and really just choose one change, really. I think we try and overwhelm ourselves with trying to do too much at once. I can be guilty of that. So I know most people can be
I think we all can, yeah.
Exactly. Try out the nighttime sort of body scan, some sort of relaxing technique like Headspace, Insight Timer. There are some great free resources out there. So just listening to something that helps you feel calm or just takes you away from the stresses that are keeping you from sleep. Maybe keep a track of what's going on for you, and just be really patient with yourself. It can take quite a while to reset our habits. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It is something that we know will take a little bit more time, than some of the easier to change things that we talk about in some of our webinars. Sleep can really take a while and maybe a few months to really get right. So we don't expect this to change overnight. And I think that's the key, isn't it? I think it's about being realistic as well with what we can do and how long that change is going to take to really have a positive impact. Because I think if we're realistic, then our motivation maintains, we don't burn out so quickly. Whereas if we think, okay, this is all going to be sorted in a couple of nights or in a week, then it's highly, if this is entrenched patterns of behavior, it can take a little bit longer and a little bit more concerted effort to change. So I can see that the top thing that we're going to be checking in on next week is a lot of you are going to be a little bit mindful of what you eat and drink in the day. So that's great to know. And maybe more of a consistent bedtime and wake up schedule. So that's really good. And there are obviously some other choices that people are making. Reducing caffeine is in there. Some people are going to be doing that bedtime wind down routine, limiting screen time, trying a relaxation technique. So that's great. I really hope that's been helpful. Um, Brilliant. So
We move on to questions.
perfect. I can see that we have some really great questions here. So let's see.
So should we start with there's someone who suffers with fibromyalgia and where they get really bad days. I'm sorry to hear that. That's yeah, very debilitating. And with it, periods of oh sorry, I keep getting the poll flashing up on my screen. And with it, I have insomnia periods. So it's a bit like feast and famine. Sometimes I sleep for 12 hours and others only 4. It's a known issue with fibro, but how do I stop it affecting my weight loss? It really is a challenge and it is a struggle. And there's things that you can control and things that you can't control. Obviously, it's hard for you to control when you're going to have a flare. But I'd really encourage you to think about the things that you can. So we talked about giving yourself enough sleep opportunity. And I think, if you're getting 12 hours, sometimes it sounds like you might already be doing that. So that's great. Think about sort of that consistent wake time in the mornings and then trying to work back from that to make sure you're getting at least 7 to 9 hours of that sleep opportunity. Think about doing those things that really help with the production of melatonin in the day, getting out early in the mornings with that natural light, thinking about your screen time, thinking about what you're doing in the evenings, thinking about all the food choices you're making during the day and your drink choices, and maybe trying a few of Ruth's top tips to help improve your chances of getting a good night's sleep if you're struggling or if you're going through one of those periods where you're not sleeping as well. So maybe having that, maybe having kiwis, a bit more protein, that mozzarella cherry tea. All of these things I would really kind of just think about and try and focus on.
Yeah, and don't be hard on yourself. And with fibromyalgia, we would really recommend you to take a look at that Mediterranean style of eating, really finding the foods that maybe are triggering off inflammation for you. We have lists of foods that we know for many people will create inflammation. But interesting, it's just worth really looking at where your good days are coming from, what's helping them be better. And if there are foods that regularly appear on your not so good days, it might be worth playing with those and seeing what difference that makes. Somebody saying they have sleep apnea and sleep with a mask, have bad deep sleep and feel this affects my weight loss. I wake many times, usually get back to sleep. Depends on the night. What can I do to help this? I'm on mandatory. Oh,
I'm on mandatory.
I think that means you're on a weight loss medication actually, rather than mandatory. I think that's a typo. You've been on it for 3 months and you're losing weight, but this is slow. You've lost 11 pounds in 3 months. Well done. I think that's absolutely fine. Do not even begin to compare your results with anyone else's. This is very important for all of us. We're all on our own individual journeys. And as you lose weight, that can really help. And I see a comment in the chat box. Somebody is saying that they've lost weight and it's really helped their sleep. So I think it is, there's a sort of bi-directional relationship. So as you lose weight, that can really help with sleep apnea. So sleep apnea, I think it would be really great. We can share a link, can't we, for is it the Epsom,
Yeah.
the the sleep apnea score, because I notice a few people are mentioning that they're waking up in the morning having slept and not feeling particularly refreshed. And sometimes sleep apnea just means that perhaps we're snoring quite loudly, we're not getting oxygenated blood particularly well, and we can feel really wretched when we wake up in the morning and not refreshed, even though we feel like we have slept. And this may be one of the underlying reasons, and it just means that you're not oxygenating your blood so well overnight. There's a very easy to do questionnaire. So I don't know if we can share that, Raman or Julia, that would be great. And just do that at home, because if you find that you have got a positive score, then it's something to take to your GP and talk to them about. There's plenty that they can do about that. So it's really worth looking. We've also shared a link for our feedback form. We're trying to gather feedback as to what you like about our webinars and the other lifestyle medicine offerings. So please do have a look at that if you have got a couple of minutes to download that. So yeah, somebody's saying in the box that they are feeling unrefreshed, and that can affect their eating. And they also have fibromyalgia. I don't know if that's the second person. Goodness, that's two in one webinar, I guess. That's a lot. I'm sorry to hear that. So I think it is all down to keeping it really simple, Sarah, isn't it? In that situation, if your poor sleep is affecting your food choices or your food preparation, then my suggestion is you make a little menu plan and you shop for the really simple to produce foods. You bulk cook a little bit, maybe use a slow cooker if you can, or if you could get one of those, you can often find them secondhand. Really just have easy to eat foods that are ready prepared in your fridge, that you have got someone to help you with, if you've got family members or friends who could help you. Or just really keep it simple. Salads are fantastic at this time of year, so they're our gift, aren't they? And I really love making those salad jars, where you just bung a load of salad in a jar and it will keep for days, and it's just a really easy meal that you can just grab and go with.
Yeah, I would also suggest making sure you've got enough protein in your diet, because that's going to keep you feeling much fuller for much longer and hopefully stop you snacking on the less healthful foods. So think about that as well. But yeah, I would encourage you to do with score as well, because that might be one of the reasons that you're feeling unrefreshed. But it sounds like there's potentially quite a lot going on there. So it's maybe a number of factors, and just work on a few things, or like one thing at a time. And then when you've nailed that, then work towards the next goal.
Okay. Gosh, this is a good one, Sarah. I'm going to leave there's a question right at the bottom. I'm going to read it for you. During pregnancy and postpartum period, I really struggled with sleep deprivation. During this time, I put on a lot of weight, around 20 kilos. This lady is not at this stage anymore and is on a course of losing weight. So she lost 29 kilos. Well done so far and counting. But we're thinking about heading into that second child and wanting to sort of really get out of the rut of being back in the sort of sleep deprivation, and how that potentially could impact your weight going forwards. Really understand how that feels. You want to stay in control, really, don't you?
Mm. I think
Sarah?
it's a very difficult period. I think particularly as you get to the sort of mid to later stages of pregnancy, because sleep does become more difficult, and certainly the positioning is a lot more tricky with a big bump. So I think later on it's just about making sure that you're prioritizing relaxation in the evenings to give yourself that best opportunity to sleep. Um, it can be quite difficult, and there's not necessarily an easy answer for that. Um, I would say, in terms of minimizing the sort of effects of sleep deprivation, it's all the things that we sort of encourage you to do anyway. It's thinking about the foods that you're eating during the day. So maybe thinking about the core meal plan, that Mediterranean style of eating. So you're having really healthful foods that are going to be really, really positive for that growing baby. Thinking about exercising. I think exercise isn't often talked enough about in pregnancy. Just making sure that you are still prioritizing exercise within the limits of what you can do and what you do sort of as a baseline. The general rule in pregnancy is whatever you were doing before pregnancy, you can and should continue to do during pregnancy, as long as that's feeling comfortable for you. And yeah, just kind of try and keep stress as low as possible. Um, and it can be quite tricky if you've got another little one there. But where you can, just having time for yourself as well, time to switch off, time to relax.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add into that, Ruth?
No, somebody's asked a great question in the chat box about having a nap during the day. Can it help? I think is not just one size fits all. It's about how long that nap is. Because my understanding is if you have like a little nap, so maybe 10 minutes, that can perk you up and make you feel better without affecting your sort of real deep sleep and the amount of deep sleep that you'll then get in the night. So earlier in the day for a nap is apparently better than later in the day and a very short duration. So if you're intentionally going to have a nap, you want to set an alarm so you don't go over that 15 or 20 minutes, really and truly. You do just want to use it as an absolute power nap as opposed to a good old deep sleep. And I think that's the trick, is to make sure you get it right so that you don't affect what's going on the next night. Do you agree with that, Sarah?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so another question, can you blood test those two things? A reminder of their names, please. So ghrelin and leptin. I'm not aware actually that there is a test that you can do for ghrelin and leptin. It's not a test that you'd be able to request from your GP, I'm afraid.
No, but there are some companies that will offer those privately. But obviously, that's not something that we would be able to direct you to. But if you had a look online, there are some private companies in the UK who do look at leptin, but not specifically ghrelin, as far as I know. But yeah, it can be interesting and it can just be really helpful to you to understand what's going on physiologically. So do have a look out for those. It is interesting, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes. Right, so we've got another question. Is it possible to re-listen to these podcasts? Sometimes it's good to listen again for a recap. If you mean the webinars, you can definitely re-watch the webinars, and we do have a podcast series that you can listen to as well. I'm not sure if we can put a link to that in the chat box.
Yeah, we for the webinar, the link for today's webinar will be sent out to you in an email
Great, thank
once
you.
it's been loaded onto YouTube. And also, yeah, here's a link to the previous webinar. So there's been this is a rerun of the previous webinar, but obviously changes each time based on questions as much as anything. And we also have probably got a podcast, so you can have a look at the podcast as well, which looks at sleep too. Good question. How much deep sleep should we get to feel refreshed? That's interesting, isn't it? And we don't really cover that in this webinar, but our sleep pattern is very different. We don't have a huge amount of deep sleep. We only need 1 or 2 hours, I think, to get that absolute level of refreshing feeling and the sort of real beneficial physiological effects. But we need the rest and the sort of lighter sleep to get that whole effect. Sort of like we go through different patterns, don't we? It's like a wave when you look at what's happening in our sleep patterns.
That's right. Yeah, I think 20 to 25%. So yeah, a couple of hours of deep sleep is probably
Is
where we should be.
what we need. Okay, so
I
any
think that's
more
the
questions? That looks about
questions.
it, doesn't it? Good. So we
Have a
will be
quick look through
checking
the chat
in.
box to see if there's anything in the chat box.
Interestingly, I don't think I shared the slide as to what we're talking about next week. So let's have a look at that. We're talking about getting out of the weight on the weight off cycle. So we're looking at yo-yo dieting next week and how to prevent yo-yo dieting. So that's going to be Monday's webinar on the 23rd. And then on the 30th, we're talking all about one of my favorite subjects, the gut microbiome, and all of the emerging evidence around the gut microbiome and its impact on weight, and what we can do about that, practically speaking.
Indeed. Sorry, we do have just one more question that's come in the chat box. Sorry if I've missed out on this, as my current environment is quite noisy, but are there any foods that can increase leptin or decrease ghrelin? So, in terms of the increasing leptin, I don't think there's any specific foods that actually increase it, but you can increase your sensitivity towards it. So, if you have a balanced whole foods diet, such as the kind of Mediterranean diet, or you have a look at the core eating plan, that's going to encourage the body to be more sensitive to leptin. But there's nothing in itself that will actually increase the leptin that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so following something like the core meal plan would be really helpful because it really puts that emphasis on that sort of balanced plate. So think about each meal being a balanced plate with the protein, the healthy fats, and some good colourful vegetables, maybe a little bit of sort of healthy whole food starchy carb. And I think the emphasis also is on which foods we want to be avoiding. So the foods that are going to be getting in the way of that leptin sensitivity are all of those sugar-rich, sort of like processed foods, the cakes, the biscuits, the sweets, the sort of gummy bears, the high sugar fizzy drinks, or even the diet sodas can really give our body the message that it's having something sweet. So physiologically, we're going to have that same response. So those are the things we want to put on the less often, reduce how often I have these pile, and actually bring them down to your minimal amounts. If there's something that you have really regularly, then just start bringing them down, sort of start noticing how often. If you're having them several times a day, can you bring that quantity down and swap in some of the sort of more whole foods, some fruit or some more vegetables? The more that we get it right in terms of that core eating, the more that helps to regulate our appetite, so that ghrelin and leptin will start balancing. So those can really help. And when you're in that whole vicious cycle of poor sleep, feeling really exhausted, reaching for the snack or the coffee to keep going, it can be really hard. So then being mindful, having those sort of like super healthy snacks ready and waiting to grab, and maybe moving the less healthy things, if you've got to have them in your house, to somewhere that you can't grab them so easily. Just set yourself up, set your kitchen up, set your snack areas up for success, because I think we can make such a difference just by changing even how we live and where we keep those. Everybody likes a treat sometimes. It's just if we're leaning into them because we're so exhausted, you're just spiraling off that slight vicious circle. Yeah, great. Is that all of our questions for today? Thank you so much to everyone, and thank you to Raman and to Julia for being here and helping us with sending out links, etc. Sarah, last thoughts from you. We're going to check in with you next week and see how you got on. See if you've.
Well, I challenge you, Ruth. What are you going to do to help improve your sleep over the next?
Oh, I'm going to tell my family to leave me alone at 11 o'clock at night. Does that count, do you think? I think it does count. I've started giving very clear messages that actually I do not talk about anything important unless it's an absolute emergency, because they seem to have this propensity for starting ridiculous conversations really late in the evening, which is not good for my poor little brain. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm definitely going to do. And actually, I went and stayed with my 96-year-old aunt recently for a weekend, and she goes to bed at something like 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the evening, and insisted I did too, and it was bliss. So I think going to bed earlier can be really lovely sometimes.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. What about you, Sarah?
Oh, good question. What am I going to do? I'm going to make sure I prioritize getting out first thing in the morning for at least 5 minutes.
Great. I'm going to hold you to it. Good luck, everyone. Have great weeks. Thank you so much for being here. We will be asking you how you got on, what you did differently, If you like a little bit of accountability, we're going to try and bring that in for you. Take care and have a good week. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye.